Make sure, obviously, everyone stays tuned for the podcast that drops tomorrow. But welcome, and we encourage you to be interactive here. Ask questions. Tell us we're wrong. Tell us we're right. Don't be afraid to get in our faces during the live stream here. Hey guys, let's jump into it. Let's talk about esports and gaming.
What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week. And we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry.
The live stream's getting bigger!
I know.
Make sure you go buy William's book, The Book of Esports, which it's killing it on Amazon as always. I think everyone has it by now, but if you don't, go buy it. And even if you do, maybe go buy a second copy, you know.
Nothing says I love my mom and dad like the Book of Esports.
And on the after show, we cover all the stuff that just didn't make it into the podcast. It's still just as good. It's just as interesting. It's maybe even better because we get to interact with you guys.
Ghost Runner. You know, I managed to fit that in with about the busiest week of work I've ever had. So anytime
priorities, right?
It's an anti-William is late device.
That's very effective.
Don't count on it though.
Risky. Hot garbage. It's an indicator of bad money management. It's an indicator of immature management.
I have some hot takes.
For the vast majority of people who game, and look, if you look at just the gaming market, the dollar in revenue of the $137 billion global gaming market, $70 billion of that is mobile. $70 billion. For those guys, this is a revolution.
Listening. Thank you for tuning in every week. Thank you for leaving those 5-star ratings and reviews. We really appreciate it. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the Book of Esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet, William as the Professor. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Lindsay Poss, Jeff Cohen, William Collis is coming. I know because I just taped the podcast with him. He is coming. For those of you who are new to the after show live stream, welcome to the official after show of esports. What we do here is we cover all the stuff that didn't make it into the podcast. The topics are still just as pressing, just as important. we still look at all of them through a business and C-suite lens, but it's just all the stuff that we couldn't fit into that 1 hour podcast. And the best part of the after show is we get to do it live with you guys. You get to ask questions. You get to challenge us. You get to get in our faces, and we encourage you to do that. I know for a fact, because I see the statistics, literally 95% of you are lurking out there. So get involved. Tell your friends about the live stream. It's a really safe and fun environment. And we love to talk the business of gaming here. Now, Lindsay, Jeff, how you guys doing this week? Oh,
So good.
and there's William.
Ooh,
There's William.
look at that.
Hey, sorry, I was actually on time tonight, but I had a camera issue. It was like kind of weird. It got my G Hub, the Logitech camera stuff, got a little needed some adjustment. So I had
How
to
are
look
you guys
good.
doing this week?
Oh,
Everyone
so
good? Lindsay, Jeff?
Yeah. So happy
Can we
to be
talk
here on
about-
St. Patrick's Day.
Wait, can we talk about how everybody's significantly upgraded their backgrounds? Like Lindsay, like this is a huge like leap up. I love it.
I will soon be banished back to the attic, but it's undergoing some renovation. So this is my dining room.
There's no way we can
Fine.
convince you to keep it in the dining room, I guess.
The new attic will have a better background, I promise. I'm working on it. Working on it. Big renovations.
And Jeff added the Helix hat, which I love.
I did. It's also green for St. Patrick's Day. I was
Oh, I
outlawed. I tried to get everyone to drink Guinness with me on the live stream. Nobody wanted to do that. So
You're not even drinking Guinness, Jeff.
well,
This is not a
yeah.
this is not a we problem.
nobody
It
else
starts with
wanted
you
to
and
do
it
it
ends
with
with
me.
you.
So
William
got
has
outlawed.
Guinness in the water bottle.
Yeah,
It's
that's
his way of
exactly
hiding
right.
it.
It's like the beauty of Nalgene's is everybody assumes it's water.
yeah,
I'm
that's
such
just
a health
vodka.
freak.
It's gigantic vodka. But I
What
did,
is
I
that?
got
Yeah,
the
it's a
hat.
lot of cinnamon and yerba mate. And I don't know what.
This is actually pineapple ginger turmeric cinnamon tea that I brewed this week.
There you go. There you
You're not
go.
far off.
That's the definition of like health
Sounds-
conscious.
Sounds awful.
delicious. Get
No,
out
it
of
sounds
here.
good. It sounds good.
I will just tease this, guys. We had a great guest on the podcast
Great
this week.
guest. Yeah.
We had Darren Glover, who's the head at Vayner Gaming, Vayner of Gary Vaynerchuk fame, and it's their esports / gaming talent division. Really, really interesting conversation there. Talked a lot about the talent side, talked a lot about the agency side, talked specifically about what they did with Booga. And I think the numbers will astonish you in terms of the success they've had with Booga. At least they really surprised me. I will just also tease. Let me bring this up here. I will tease that we talked also about the Chipotle activation that they did with a bunch of esports stars, which was really cool. And we talked about a much more unfortunate story, which was Blizzard firing 50 employees on their live event side, which I will reiterate what I said on the podcast, which is it's a very sad story. It's never a good thing when people get laid off. And we hope that all of the people who got laid off find work, land on their feet, and do well. Guys, we have a bunch of other topics. I don't know if you guys wanted to start with the Blizzard thing. I know, I'm sure some of you, we have a Discord for Business of Esports, and I know there's been some discussion around the Blizzard story. We can talk about it if anyone in the chat wants us to talk about it, or we can move on. We have a lot of other stuff, other investments, other news this week. Andbox raised money. We have to talk about that. It's a huge surprise. I don't know. Where do you guys want to start? Do any three of you want to talk about Blizzard again?
What was the quick take from you guys on? I haven't heard the podcast. What was kind of like was there any, deeper business take versus, just the obvious and the hopes that everyone, finds new jobs?
I would say some of the discussion where I don't think any of us had a good answer, but at least the way I framed my question was, I'm an owner in a Activision Blizzard franchise, right? Hypothetical situation. I've invested tens of millions of dollars for this franchise into this franchise. I've been promised and sold by Activision Blizzard on this idea that this is going to be just like the NFL, where you're going to have a stadium and home games and home stands, and people are going to travel to go see their home team play. And it's very centered around live events. A lot of what they sold was very centered around live events. And then, so you're this team owner and you've invested tens of millions in this vision, and sort of out of the blue, Activision swoops in, says we're firing. I think the number in the end was more than 50. It was like 100 or something. We're firing all these people, and they literally use this word, we're pivoting away or shifting away from live events. What is, like, if you're an owner, what is your state of mind in that moment? There's a business question there, which is, how do you feel about all this? And what is Activision Blizzard really trying to do? Do they genuinely care about esports at all? Do they have a different solution? These are all questions we asked.
I mean, presumably the owners didn't probably find out, with that press release as we did, but that's not your point, obviously.
We don't know that, and they might have.
I would hope that would be, you never.
It wouldn't surprise me.
That would be pretty shocking if they found out a big strategic decision about the league that they, co-own through a press release. So yeah, I assume they would have had some sort of part in deciding that this was the right strategy. I think. I would almost guarantee, I would bet good money they did not know. Because if they knew, then this wouldn't have been the announcement, in my mind. And I think, William, you brought this up sort of on the podcast, which is like, hopefully they have some solution, something else in their back pocket here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Otherwise, this is just so sad. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. It's all sad.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Is like, first of all, we really hope everybody finds jobs. I'm sure they were super incredible, passionate staff. Everybody I've ever, encountered from Activision Blizzard is just 100% committed to the space, and, really wonderful people, basically. But the hope, I think, that we'd express is it's something else, right? Like it's an evolution. It's not a subtraction, but quite what the evolution is, we're waiting to see, where it goes forward from here. Yeah. But I mean, I don't want to rehash the podcast too much, because you guys listen to the podcast. It's a great episode. We have an amazing guest, so.
Yeah, I will just throw in, and you guys can comment on this if you want, or people, in the chat can ask questions. Christian, how's it going? Good to see you. What I really hate about this, like, I genuinely feel for the people who got laid off, because these are probably very talented people, very hardworking people that were doing their best in the environment that they were given. My frustration is Activision Blizzard has so thoroughly bungled esports at a senior management level, right? Like the MLB guy is the one who announced these layoffs, basically, right? Like this guy,
you have to bring him into it, huh?
Should have been the one laid off, right? Like the problem was him. It was not the 50 employees they just laid off. And I hate that it's these 50 or 100 that suffer because of really terrible mismanagement. This is my consistent frustration with Activision Blizzard. It's now affecting people's livelihoods. Like, I don't know how much more I can say that this is being thoroughly mismanaged.
It's also just really odd to pivot away from live events at the very moment where the world is like starting to have glimmers of hope of getting live events back. Like there's going to be a massive resurgence of demand for this. Like we've covered this on the stream before, how like there's so much pent up demand. Whatever that survey was, 70% of esports fans say they want to attend an event in person after the pandemic. Like, and now you're canceling live events. So I mean, maybe there was just some, extra kind of people in the organization that they needed to right size, and they kept them on through the pandemic. I'm trying to be give a little bit of credit to Activision. Maybe they didn't want to lay off these people in the beginning of the pandemic, so they kept them on board. And now that we're kind of out of it, they decided to do this. But it's just odd timing to announce a shift away, towards digital, when like if they had been doing this literally 1 year ago, we'd be like, well, okay, that kind of makes sense. But to do it now, it's almost like the exact opposite of what you would think.
Can I ask a question that we didn't cover on the podcast, which is, are any of you bothered that these layoffs happen? And by the way, they gave them pretty standard severance packages, like 3 months salary and a year of healthcare, which is, I would argue, generous even. But then they gave them like a $200 BattleNet card, which, like, had they left it out, I feel like would have been better than giving it, because the optics are just so bad. But do any of you think that in the other story on Activision Blizzard this week was Bobby Kotick getting a $200 million payout? Like, does anyone feel like there's maybe some disconnect here? Or is this just like really the communications division doing their jobs very poorly? I don't know. Do any of you?
I mean, this is probably a larger story or conversation around like capitalism and like shareholder economics.
I don't want to go down
like
that
general
path,
yeah, I know we don't want to cover that here, but I don't think this is necessarily an Activision story. It's more of like those bigger picture inequality themes, but yeah.
Hold on. Let me rephrase.
It was tone deaf. It was tone deaf to both of those things are just tone deaf. But in reality, in terms of the Bobby thing, I mean, Activision stock has had an incredible, 30-year run, but it's been incredible 2 years. So, it's not shocking that he's compensated for it. But yeah, it's just unfortunate what happened with the people down the chain.
Also, I would say my view, I want to be clear. I don't necessarily agree with Paul about where the blame is described. I think it's like, look at the stock price. I think it's been an incredibly well-run company. Like, you can't argue that it's, and I know that there's been some challenges in specific sectors of the business, but overall you can't argue with what's happened to the share price, So I don't share that view, but I also think, look, I actually want to go into other stories, because I think there's no need for us to stay on something that's, kind of sad and I think a step back for our industry when there's so much stuff that's like exciting that happened this week, even Activision Blizzard related. Like, can we talk about the article I sent you, Paul? Can we go there?
We could go there. Actually, let me just let me open that.
That was a nice little segue there, William.
Well, there was some awesome, like, really exciting stuff that came up this week. Like, I really mean it. Like,
actually, because I lost it because you had sent it to me in the in the other chat.
No, you lost it because you have 600 tabs open.
Yeah.
That's why. Open another tab and Google.
Only
Resend it to me in Discord.
Yeah, let me find it here for you. Hold on.
But that one is more interesting. I also think I almost feel like it's an Activision Blizzard plant. Like, if there was any truth to this story, we would have heard about it at BlizzCon. And I sort of just don't believe a word that this article says. But I'm the Activision Blizzard skeptic to William's Activision Blizzard apologist. But yeah, hang on here. Let me open this up. This is from Games Radar, and the headline here is: Blizzard is developing an unannounced AAA multiplayer game with epic, memorable worlds. Job listings at Blizzard point to a first-person shooter with several maps. So they're working on this unannounced AAA multiplayer game for PC and consoles. There's really nothing more to this story other than that we don't know anything about it, other than these supposed job listings. So can we all conclude that Activision Blizzard's back to making great new games? Like, I don't know.
The interesting thing here is it's a new property that's a shooter that's not Call of Duty or Overwatch, right? Like, that's the interesting thing to discuss here is, unless I'm reading this article completely wrong, right? It's that they're introducing yet another shooter IP into the mix, which to me is a really interesting decision, because it raises the question as a publisher, like, how, like, can you, like, does a genre become saturated? And at what point do your own SKUs compete against each other? Like, I think that Activision Blizzard did a phenomenal job of distinguishing Overwatch from Call of Duty in market. I like full credit to them. That was a difficult story to tell, and they told it really, really well, to the point where I believe that they're very distinctive properties today. You know what I mean? And I think they have very distinctive fan bases and all of that stuff. So full credit to them. Can they do it for a third shooter? right? Like, and more to the point, what's the white? I think it's fun to speculate. Like, what's the white space that they see in the shooter genre that's not already covered by Call of Duty and Overwatch? You know, because those are pretty expansive and successful shooters. Like, it's not like Call of Duty is played by 5 people. You know,
I mean, call me a skeptic, guys, but why? And I'm sure because they already have been working on this. The article says, you know, they've done some concept art or whatever else. There's a small team that's like working on this new development. Why wouldn't you show this at BlizzCon? It's not like Activision Blizzard doesn't announce games like 5 years before they come out. I mean,
the obvious answer, Paul, here is it's 10 years out, right? Or, you know, it's so in the concept stage that it's not even, they don't even have anything to show. You know, I mean, we're years away from even seeing Overwatch 2 and Diablo, right? Like maybe we see one next year and one the year after. So, you know, I would guess the earliest this game could possibly come would be 2025. And I wouldn't, you know, be getting my hopes up. So it's exciting that they're looking at new IP, and that's definitely good for Activision. It's good for the industry. It's funny, when I first read the headline, when it said they're making a game with Epic, I thought it was a game with Epic, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. And then clearly it was just they were using Epic as an adjective, not a, you know, whatever.
Call of Duty Fall Guys edition.
Yeah. But I'm not,
Fall
I guess
Guys
I'm not as
blowing each
excited
other
as
to
William, just because I'm more on your side on this, Paul, where I'm skeptical that we'll see this come to fruition in any sort of reasonable time frame, because Blizzard is famously just slow and they don't have the teams to execute on even what the franchises they already have. So for them to create a new IP, I mean, it could be a decade.
I mean, can I put my tinfoil hat on that this is maybe a plant of a story? Because no one was excited about BlizzCon. No one's been excited about anything at Activision Blizzard in a few years now, like for a few years now. Is this a plant of a story and some sort of bogus job listings to get people? Like, what's the chance that an analyst asks about this rumor on the next earning call?
Probably pretty high.
So, like, if you plant this, does it
although
not accomplish its
little
goal?
known fact, Activision actually, they curate the questions on the call, so you have to ask them the questions in advance, and then they tell you if you can ask a certain question. So they, you know, they don't get surprised.
Christian says maybe they assume good to have a backup in case COD or Overwatch loses popularity. Could be that. Could be Battle Royale. Like, it could be them throwing their hat in that ring. Maybe. I still think it's a bogus story that's planted for like good PR. Chris says Activision presents James Cameron Avatar FPS. Maybe. I mean, I guess anything's possible at this point.
I think Ubisoft, Ubisoft is doing that, actually, aren't they?
Is it an Avatar
Ubisoft,
shooter?
I don't know. It's probably not a shooter, but Ubisoft has an Avatar game.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Lindsay, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this, but like, where do you fall on the spectrum of tinfoil hat versus like, this is real and we may see something in a year or two?
Well, it's also, even if it could not be a plant by Activision, it still could be a stretch from the job postings when Activision is a large company that's working on the development of several games. Either way, I don't know if this seems like a story that might not be a story yet and could go in a lot of directions of being a really cool and interesting story, or it could just be Activision posting jobs. So,
I mean, do any of you guys think it's because they just don't have contenders in certain genres? Like, they don't have, I guess Call of Duty has the search and destroy mode. I was going to say they don't have like a CSGO Valorant style shooter, right? More strategic, round based, but I guess Call of Duty does have a game mode that does that. And Call of Duty does have a VR, like a battle royale game mode. So I don't know. You think does anyone think this could be just brand new and innovative, or them trying to get into a genre where they don't have a play today? William, I don't know. You wanted.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I have so many thoughts about this. I'm trying to think how to collect them. Like, I mean, can I go really out there? Can I go really out
put the tinfoil hat on.
Do it. It's a shooter MMO. right? Like,
Interesting.
like really out there, like total speculation. I have no way of knowing what this project is, obviously. But like, if you think about it, like there's not a lot of white space left in the shooter genre other than like, an old, what was it, Planet Side? That was
Maybe
like
this is
your
your
MMO.
StarCraft MMO, but it's
I
first
just
person.
always want them to do an MMO because that's the logical next project for them to do. So anytime there's like, a subsequent thing, it's like, please make this an MMO. Please make this an MMO.
You've got classes in there, Protoss, Terran.
Exactly. Like it's all great. It all works. Get going. Yeah, you have the whole. It writes itself, guys.
I love the idea. Let's move on. Let's talk about New York City. This is a New York story. It's an investment story. This one from Esports Insider. Kevin Durant invests in New York esports org Andbox. This is coming through Kevin's investment vehicle, 35 Ventures, and they're gonna join the Andbox team as investors and creative partners, according to the release. For those who don't know, Andbox has a Call of Duty League team and an Overwatch League team. And I didn't even know this. They have a Valorant team that I had never heard of. So essentially, this is, the Esports Insider, they rarely sort of know what they're talking about. They frame this as a VC investing in Andbox. This is a basketball player investing in Andbox through his business manager. How do you guys feel about the Andbox story today, in light of everything that's happened, like even in light of the sort of the announcement from Activision Blizzard saying we're getting out of live events? Like, how do you guys feel about athlete investors in that light, and maybe the Andbox story specifically?
I mean, we've talked about athlete investors quite a bit in the past, and about how they don't always have the greatest management teams to figure out kind of the cutting edge type stuff. I found the decision for Andbox interesting because I know that J-Lo and A-Rod were also at some point involved in Andbox as well, if I remember correctly.
I think they were looking at buying the Mets, which,
okay,
the owners of the Mets were also owners of Andbox, and that deal never happened. Like their deal never went through. They don't own the Mets.
Just, I guess more the point I was going with was the association between J-Lo, A-Rod, and Andbox didn't really seem to do much for Andbox, even if it was theoretical.
Do you think Kevin Durant does more, Lindsay?
No.
But you're a big basketball fan. Like, if you're a fan of Kevin Durant, are you not like super excited about Andbox now? Like, he's going to wear the Andbox hoodies and the.
He is not a geographically oriented player. So I'm a fan of him because of how he plays, but not where he plays. There's certain players that really define a team and define a fan base. He's not one of the players that defines New York City's fan base at all.
This is a great question. So, like, and I wanted to ask you this because I know nothing about basketball, which is like, Andbox's whole pitch was, we own New York, right? We're the New York esports teams. Wouldn't there have been some athlete that would have been more, and maybe you have a name in mind, but I can't think of one right now, who's like New York, like that's a New York guy.
Aaron Judge is the first one that comes to mind, the baseball player, the Yankee. Part of the issue with New York's professional teams is that there hasn't been a real dynasty in many of them. So there haven't been real franchise players to help out the esports scene. Jeff, can you think of any? There's no Jets player that could sign on.
Like Patrick Ewing or
Eli
Manning.
Ones.
Yeah.
I can't think of any active players, but Derek Jeter, same thing. There's plenty of old Knicks players that would have been great, but no. Also just the franchise itself just recently moved from New Jersey to New York. It's not like the Brooklyn Nets aren't like a I love New York type franchise quite yet. They're still working on building that persona. So when you look at the overlap of these two things in terms of invigorating or making the people of New York fans are investing in that kind of thing, I don't see a whole lot, which is unfortunate. I see more people from outside the area being interested if they're Durant fans.
Could we get an update? Can someone remind me what assets does Andbox actually have? I feel like I talk about them a lot, but I kind of like don't even
the
know.
New York Subliners, which is a Call of Duty League team,
Okay.
and the New York Excelsior, which is an Overwatch League team. And evidently they have a Valorant squad, but the fact that I had never heard of it maybe tells you something there.
Okay.
That's it. Those three assets.
So it's
And
just the Activision League
Box,
teams.
the apparel brand.
Yeah, so they're doomed. I mean, Kevin Durant can't stop. He's not going to be able to. And this kind of dovetails in every conversation we've had about the Activision leagues. I mean, they're in a world of trouble. We just talked about it earlier, pivoting away from in person, mismanagement. Maybe Call of Duty less so than Overwatch, but yeah, there's no way Kevin Durant as an owner is going to be able to change the direction of an entire league, short of him joining a team and playing, every week in the actual game. I don't think he's, his money and his brand is not going to solve that.
So here's a question for you guys then, and William, maybe you want to answer this directly. Chris says, what does esports do when they run out of athlete investors?
I actually want to be an apologist for this deal if I can, right?
Yeah,
I think we've been extremely critical, but how is this not incredible news, right? Like this is a absolute AAA star brand, right? Let's be honest, Lindsay, right? This is probably one of the best brands in, I would say, celebrity sports today, right? I think
You're pushing it.
Oh, really?
He's a wonderful basketball player, but he doesn't have a brand. He's not known for anything outside of playing basketball. He's not. He has a great foundation.
He has a show like The Boardroom that he does like some business stuff. I don't think William's statement is wrong. I don't think he's as beloved as he was before he went to the Warriors, but he definitely he is a superstar.
Oh, so he'll be a Hall of Famer for sure. So when it comes to celebrityness, it's pretty low, honestly.
Argue over magnitude of stardom, but the guy is a superstar. I think there are probably a lot of teams courting him, right? He had a pick probably about who he I think you can maybe, there's some the notion that he's not a sophisticated investor, I dispute. I think he probably surrounds himself with smart people. He's very successful. He himself is probably extremely smart to have that level of success that he's enjoyed. And as I said, I bet you if he decides to move into esports, it's not just this is the only team that he had a full suite of options he could evaluate. I think it speaks quite well of Ambox that they were able to win him over. It says they have a strategy. It says they maybe have more in the hopper than is being publicly discussed. It makes me quite bullish on the prospects of Ambox, to be frank with you,
So you would you put your own money into Ambox, William?
Well, Paul, that's an unfair question to ask.
Why is that an unfair question?
Really, that's a good question.
Well, look, I mean,
if you want to be the apologist, let's back it up.
Well,
if you can't even put your own fake theoretical money in, then you don't really like the deal.
Well, okay, guys, but also let's be clear here. This is a podcast that has to have competing views, right? Right. But B, and quite honestly, I believe I believe that there's probably synergy value for a AAA player of this level, a AAA celebrity of this level, and an association with the New York market and an association with some of the existing franchise leagues in terms of stability and lack of risk that is maybe makes it more appealing as an investment profile than it would to me as an individual. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. So let me ask then a better question, William. You're Kevin Durant's business manager, okay? And you have two options: invest in Ambox or invest in FaZe Clan. Where do you put your money? Where do you recommend that your client Kevin Durant puts his money?
Well, it's tricky, but I think for me that the sale is made on the creative partner announcement, right? That's present. I think, right? FaZe Clan has a ton of people who are celebrities who are already invested in it. You probably want to feel like the org that you're getting into is your org, that you have a real ownership and influence stake in. And I think it's difficult to feel that in FaZe today, right? It just has such a large cast of characters backing the org. I could definitely see the appeal of a pitch from Andbox precisely because you probably do have control, you probably do have voice, and probably the notion of you being a creative partner is very genuine there, because I think there could be a lot of creative lift that's given to the organization.
The one thing I have to say, and this is a little bit of a joke, but a little bit serious, I have to feel a little bad for Kevin Durant. The day after he announces this, LeBron announces that he owns the Red Sox. It's like the guy can't, he can't get out of LeBron's shadow. William and Paul, maybe you don't even get that joke, but Lindsay probably does.
I got you, Jeff. Don't worry.
Guys, my simple view on this was, and I had my ear to the ground on the Andbox thing. I have it on, good rumors that they've been out fundraising for at least the last 6 to 9 months, and that every venture investor, every family office had turned them down, thought the deal was way overvalued, thought there wasn't much there, and it was not a secret that they were really struggling to raise cash and really desperate to raise cash. In that context, when I saw this, I'm going, clearly someone missed something, right? It's either all the venture guys and all the family offices that don't understand this, or it's Kevin Durant and his money manager that somehow have this, they're just oracles and they see something that the others don't. I know where I fall sort of in which camp on this one.
I mean, there is a little bit of a third option where Kevin Durant could look at it and say, with my money, I can actually help this organization, versus a VC is just looking at it as a financial transaction and they don't have the horsepower to actually help the organization. Now, I'm doing a little bit of William's game here. I don't really necessarily believe that. I kind of agree with your point, Paul, but there is always that when a celebrity puts in money, they could be bringing more to the table with their cachet that actually helps their investment versus just like some New York City VC who has no name brand.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to poo-poo Kevin Durant's money, right? I would love for Kevin Durant to be invested in esports. Would love it. I welcome it. I think it's great for the industry, right? I think what continues to frustrate me is where they're putting it, right? I can think of 20 other places. Go buy GMBL stock, for God's sakes, right? Instead of there, and you'll end up better. And so it's I'm consistently frustrated by the decisions that I think are suboptimal. And we can argue, could it work? Maybe. But I think no one can argue that it is suboptimal, that he probably had other options where his capital could be better put to use in the gaming and esports world than Andbox, which, kind of worthless franchises, huge burn, basically nothing to show for it after 3 or 4 years at it. So I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm frustrated, even though I like the big headline and I like the Kevin Durant, this is so cool.
Oh, it's great for Andbox. I mean, this is great capital for them.
Andbox will still fail. There's no amount of capital that can fix when something's that broken. It's just not. You can't money fixes a lot of problems in businesses, but it can't fix that. I just don't think it can. Chris says Xset playing the culture angle in New York City is a better play than New York City athlete donations. I mean, and I don't know if you guys have thoughts on this in particular, but the whole Andbox thing is we own New York. The fact that Xset has sort of made inroads in New York, G2 has sort of said they're going to do something in New York. Andbox doesn't even really own New York anymore. And so, sorry, Jeff.
What's also interesting, I mean, isn't G2 owned by the Nets owner, Joe Tsai?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
So isn't it odd that he would invest in a team, Durant would invest in a team that's kind of, I guess, somewhat competitive with his own team's owner's esports team? Just odd.
You know what? I would bet, again, that the people managing his money just don't have enough industry knowledge to have gone that far, to have even come You'd have to know that. If your boss owned an esports team, you think you would invest in another esports team without knowing that he had an esports team? I find that hard to believe.
You got to give these guys like some sort of credit.
I'm not trying to take anything away from them. I just think they may not be that open about
do,
sort
like,
of
no due diligence before they put in these millions of dollars. Like
That's right. Like, what do you want to buy? Hey guys, let's buy a basketball team.
Yeah, the guy who signs my paychecks owns an esports team, and I didn't know that. I also invested in a competing team. Like, just doesn't,
So if they knew that, why did this go down this way?
That was my question. I don't know, but I'm sure they did.
you just made this case. And
You just made Kevin Durant look like a huge enemy of his own basketball team.
Well, Kevin Durant is possible. He's got like some weird stuff going on in the head. Like, maybe this was like part of his like rebelling against the team. Like, oh, I'm gonna like invest against you. I don't know that, you
think that's more likely than they just didn't know or didn't ask.
I don't know. I just lay out these things for you guys to play it out.
Martin says, "Hey guys, forgot the U.S. daylight savings change." Martin, not a problem. Welcome. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's talk about. We have Rocket League we can talk about. We have Tiger Woods. We have Huawei. What do you guys feel like touching on today? Actually, does anyone want to talk about loot?
But we can do that.
Does anyone want to talk about loot boxes? I just want to bring this up. It could be a very short conversation. I was just a little bit surprised about this, considering how much backlash there has been against loot boxes. But this article had like actual revenue numbers from Juniper Research, who have done a study on this. And what they're saying is revenue from loot boxes will exceed $20 billion by 2025. That's from $15 billion in 2020. So pretty significant increase.
Wow.
And the feeling, at least in my mind, has always been that the industry is retrenching sort of from loot boxes, right? Going more to like cosmetics you buy directly, skins you buy directly, not random loot box. Does anyone think these numbers will pan out sort of as described here?
I would assume a lot of that's mobile, right? Mobile still has a big loot box mechanic involved. So I don't know how much of that is console, PC, because I agree. I thought, a lot of the AAA publishers have kind of, outside of Ultimate Team, kind of sort of moved away from loot boxes towards more like the Battle Pass and cosmetics and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, this is essentially forecasting like 30% growth over the next 5 years. That doesn't sound sort of like a retrenching away from loot boxes.
I guess it'll depend on if there's federal regulations or not as well.
Yeah, that's true. We've been talking about that literally for like 2 years now, and it hasn't really happened.
Well, come on, 2 years in the government, that's nascent.
That's also true.
Give them like 3 to 4 more, and then we can talk.
But so no one's surprised by this. No one thinks it's ambitious to say loot boxes are gonna. Hold on, don't get me wrong. I think like in-game purchases, microtransactions are going to grow even faster than this. I'm talking specifically about loot boxes, randomized, essentially, items, like random items that you pay for.
This is over 4 years, so it's not a extremely nuclear amount of growth. And if you're talking about increasing the gaming population, then I don't think it's that crazy, especially when it's mostly mobile, like Jeff said.
But given that, again, the retrenchment away from loot boxes, no one thinks it peaks somewhere and then sort of is in decline, and microtransactions in general take over. William, I don't know if you have thoughts on this, or
not so much. No, I mean, like, this is one where I'm kind of like withholding judgment temporarily, basically.
But in general, do you think the trend is like, how long is there an upward trend on loot boxes before we sort of peak and revenue is generated through other means primarily?
The issue is, like, there's a couple issues here. I'm trying how to collect my thoughts here. The issue is, first of all, like, it's an extremely prevalent mechanic today. It's basically industry standard, right? So that says to me, I don't see loot boxes changing unless there's an industry level change, right? Which is hard to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's hard, like, particularly when it seems like it's a very successful mechanic. Like there's a reason the industry has moved towards it, right? The reason they moved towards it is because you make more money doing it. So if there's economic incentives to do it, and it's prevalent across pretty much everybody in the space, like, why would you expect that to change? You know what I mean? Now, I'm not arguing the morality of it. I'm not arguing the business practice of it. Like, I think personally, I would like to see mechanics other than loot boxes that are, more prevalently debuted in the space. But I also don't really see the catalyst for change on it right now. You know what I mean? Like, what is going to adjust it? Tell me, like, what do you think that's going to make companies wake up and say, you know what, no more loot boxes? Is it regulation, right? But that seems unlikely. Let's be honest, like it's
and clearly there's no slowing of demand, right?
Exactly.
If the research
and consumers seem to want it and enjoy purchasing it, right? Or arguably purchase it, right? So like what's the catalyst here? The only catalyst could be a better monetization model, right? But I hope there is one. Like, I would love it if our industry got even better at delivering value to consumers. And we've had seismic shifts in revenue models before, like free to play. When free to play first came out, everyone was like, so dumb. Why would you give up $60, man? And now it's it's the other thing. It's like literally you're like, what? You're not free to play? Wow. Why? Whoa, where have you been for the last 10 years? But the reality is, short of a business model shift and economic incentive shifts, I think this is how the industry is monetizing today. And my only hope is that the practices, maybe through more sophisticated price differentiation or something, the practices become less negative feeling and become more like the actual promise of a loot box, which is it's always something cool you want in it. You just don't know what it is, as opposed to what loot boxes are today, which is, I really want this one thing and I have to go through tons of junk loot boxes to get it,
Yeah. Christian says, went to the dark side. I assume you mean loot boxes. Chris says there's a black market FIFA card industry. It's crazy. Interesting. Christian, have esports teams started to sell fan tokens like sports teams? Anyone have a thought on this one?
Like NFTs?
That's What?
I don't know if fan tokens is a reference to something specific here.
Yeah, can you tell us exactly what you mean by fan tokens?
And Martin says, want it and purchase it are definitely different things in regards to loot boxes. That's true, but if people really had an issue, there would be they would stop buying them altogether. The reality is, if the demand's still there, while you may not love the mechanic, the fact that you're still spending hard-earned dollars on it, in some ways, I think, says more than whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, the thing is, people buy loot boxes. Like, I don't know how to stress that. Like, it's a consumed mechanic. Like, if people like it, we might prefer games monetized differently, but I would also prefer that games were $30 instead of $60 as a default price, like that. And that's not supposed to be facetious. That comes across as flippant, but like the reality is, the consumer behavior seems to indicate this is something that's consumable, right? So until that changes, or until there's a better revenue model or regulation or something like that, it probably will be the model of consumption.
Yeah, I mean, I think consumers' voices, are heard, to your point, when they actually do rebel. I mean, we saw with EA, with Star Wars, famously, they removed loot boxes and microtransactions, and they have gotten better, right? In their most recent games, they've done no loot boxes. There was no loot boxes in the recent Star Wars game. They did a Star Wars single player. So, we saw the same thing with Ubisoft when they had Ghost Recon kind of blew up because of the same issues. They've gone back and kind of fixed things. So I do think, like, slowly but surely the industry is moving in the right direction. But to William's point, if people are buying it, then these are corporations. They're not gonna, if you're buying the good that they're selling, they're not gonna say, oh, well, actually, morally, we feel like we don't have an obligation now to sell these. It's just not gonna happen. So,
Christian said they are virtual collectibles that can be purchased by fans and represent some sort of ownership of the team. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on this. I know there was one esports team that did do some crowdfunding. It wasn't a token, but actually crowdfunded to raise money for the team now. That esports team the name is escaping me. So I know that's been done where fans can own a piece of the team, like actual equity in the team. But virtual collectibles that represent ownership, not that I've heard of. I don't know if you guys have any examples offhand, but I don't think that has come.
No,
to
but
esports yet.
it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's certainly creative and on brand with the times.
Yeah, my question with those things is always like, if you're part owner in a team, you own 0.00001% of the team. Yeah, Fnatic, Chris, thank you. Fnatic got crowdfunding.
Oh, that's
If
right.
you own, some tiny percentage of it, like what's in it for you, the investor?
Well, if the value of the team goes up, if you actually own equity. I mean, that's like saying like I bought 10 shares of Apple. Like, well, I don't exactly have the right to go walk into Tim Cook's office and tell him how to design the next iPhone, but I have something that has value and then entitles me to a share of profits and can increase in value.
You're talking about a publicly traded company with stock that's liquid, like it's totally different than buying equity in a privately valued company where you have zero liquidity, zero say in the management, and such a small piece that it's almost trivial, right? Like, yes, venture investors do similar things, but they take a sizable stake.
Yeah.
Sometimes they sit on the board, right? The nature of the relationship is very different.
So you just don't like crowdfunding?
I mean, I get why people do it. I get it. But I think people underestimate how important it is for your investors to be value-added partners and really add value, not just through the dollar or the check that they sign, but their relationships, their knowledge, their experience, etc. I'm a huge believer that the best investors add value.
I think in this case, it would almost be a fan engagement tool rather than like a capital raising tool. There's definitely easier ways to raise capital than to go out and crowdfund and like have like 1 million tiny retail investor, whatever, like people own 0.1 shares. But I think for an esports team particularly, like it could be a good novel way to, let's say you have 5% ownership of your team is owned by like all of your fans. I think that could be a good way to like keep fans because they literally own the team. I don't know. I think it's creative.
Possibly. I just worry sometimes it comes off as like, as a little bit like, I want to use the right word, kind of like a cheap way to just generate revenue, right? And milk your fan for a few more $100 and give them something that like almost like a keychain, right? Like here's a keychain. I don't know. I'm not down on crowdfunding in every situation. To Christian, to your question, I don't think we've seen anyone other than Fnatic do crowdfunding, and also anyone. I know Hitmarker, I think, as a company raised money through crowdfunding, but not using some kind of collectible token. So there are startups in the space that are also using crowdfunding mechanisms other than teams, but I haven't seen using tokens as well. Christian says they've done it for Barca, PSG, Juventus, soccer clubs. Zev says, can we ask about Helix, Genji, GG, Leap here? Zev, you can ask anything you want here. Doesn't mean we will always have the answers, but you can always ask anything you want here.
I've got the hat on here, and we've got, William can clearly answer anything about Genji. So we can try, Zev.
I mean,
you can ask away.
You have the two people in the room, Zev. If they can't answer the question, then probably no one can. So.
Yeah, then
Christian says it creates a new business vertical. I don't disagree there. Chris says co-signed with profit. Smart money is better than any money. I hope no one disagrees with that. So yeah, Zev, please
Smart
feel free
money
to.
Is better than no money.
Any money is better than no money, yes, but smart money is better than any money.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Although sometimes I imagine it would be nice to have the dumb money. It doesn't ask questions. It's kind of like, it's just there. Like
you would think.
I would think that having not,
but it's not the reality.
Run a private business. Like
the dumb money asks the most questions, is on top of you the most because they don't understand it. Right.
Fair
enough. And so, I always feel like smart money is always better. Zev says, was wondering what your thoughts are on the competitive landscape. That's a very, it's a big question.
William, you can take that.
That's extremely broad. I'd have to like you'd have
Everyone
to be a little
settle
bit
in for the next hour.
Yeah, it'd have to be a little more specific, like the esports competitive landscape. I mean, I think it's the industry as a whole. I think it's actually very good because although there's a lot of competition that's taking place between businesses and industries, it's a growth industry, right? And competition in growth industry is great because you can take no share from your competitors and still get bigger. Right. That's
William,
the secret. Like,
let me just narrow you in. He wants to know who are the competitors for you guys specifically, like Genji, like Helix, I guess Esports Entertainment Group as a whole.
I don't know, Jeff. I want Jeff to kind of. I'm curious, Jeff. Who do you think the competitors are for us in our business model?
Well, we'll go through the three there, and I mean, for GG Circuit, I don't think there's any great competitor. I mean, there, are other centers that have kind of built their own infrastructure that generally doesn't seem to work, and then they go to use GG Circuit. There's a couple of other open source, competitors out there, but I don't think there's anything that's enterprise grade that if you're trying to build, a group of centers and do it right, I haven't found anything better. William, you're probably closer to it clearly than I, but that's my opinion on things. For Helix, I mean, there's a lot of people out there doing LAN centers. There's Nerd Street, there's Simplicity, there's a number of others. But I think the expertise that Helix has, is kind of second to none in terms of what they can do with the capital that they're putting up, which really isn't that much. I think one of the things I always find talking to investors about this acquisition is people don't understand just how efficient these guys are. Like, they think we're going out and spending $10 million building an esports arena. And I'm like, no. We're spending like $500,000 and these things are profitable, within a year. And that always gets people like, wow, like that's a much better business than I kind of had thought. So I think the Helix guys are obviously awesome. And I won't speak for William, so he can answer about Genji.
Yeah, I mean, on the Genji front, I gotta be careful about what I say here. I want to think about it. I mean, there are, plenty of people in the space who are doing, or people like data is a known opportunity in the esports space. I think we're relatively unique in that we've largely been focused as B2B, right? Like a lot of the opportunities in the space have been like, hey, here's opportunities to give consumers more tools to do something with their game. Whereas we've been very focused as sort of like a business to business relationship and trying to unlock the power of the data for, what I would say are the people who generate the most revenues in the space and the biggest revenues in the space, like the game makers and the ecosystem catalyzers. So, yeah, but I mean, it's always tricky because, you want as a business owner to think that your business is totally peerless. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's positive, but at the same time, you want to feel like everybody else is immediately, coming for you. So you have a fire and energy to grow. But yeah, I don't know if that's helpful as like a general summary.
And then Zev, to answer your question, GG Circuit is what Allied uses at the Luxor. A bunch of the public company like Simplicity uses GG Circuit, Allied uses them. Obviously, Helix does. Amuka, who's a Canadian company, uses them. So they are definitely the market leader for that.
Angela says Esports Foundry has one. Angela, I'm not sure what you were referring to there. Is it a GG Circuit competitor that you were referring to, or let me just add, like, if you'll allow me, because I'm the outsider, you get my 2 cents, which is there will always be competitors sort of at every point in the stack, right? There are other sports and esports betting companies. There are other analytics companies. There are other esports center companies. There are other esports content companies. There are other, like we could make a list of competitors at every point in the stack. I think what is unique when you put them all together is now you can start doing things that no one else can do in isolation. So, the sports bettor who spends $2 on an Argyle property, all of a sudden you can get him to go spend, $2 more on vi.bet or vi.gg, right? Like, the analytics you're collecting about all these players participating in the EGL tournaments. well, now you can use that to monetize better or to do other things better. Like, it's the synergies between the pieces and the vertical integration that makes the offering unique and market leading in my mind. It's once you put all those pieces together, that's when the story gets really exciting. In isolation, you could always find competitors and sort of compare feature to feature and who's better, who's leading, who has more customers, who has more revenue. But when you put the whole stack together, it becomes really hard to compete against that, because you can come with a one-stop shop turnkey solution for just about anything anyone wants to do.
That's really well said, Paul. I agree with that. Like, and actually that's a general truth to esports today, is like the real power is coming in scale. I truly believe that. Do you know what I mean?
Which is why I think we'll see more consolidation, right, William? I don't know if that's a logical conclusion you've come to as well, but I do think we're going to see a lot more consolidation over the next couple of years.
Oh, completely. Yeah, 100%.
Zev said, Paul, couldn't agree more. The potential synergies are incredible with you, 100%. Basically trying to find holes in my already positive view of the company.
Don't find holes in it. Just ride with it.
Yeah,
I would say
exactly.
there's no company on the planet that's perfect, but as an investor where you're looking to put your money, you want to find the one with the most compelling story and the most compelling management. Like, if you can check those two boxes, and considering the two guys at the bottom of the screen here are the management, this is a better bet than any that you can get. So that's my simple view on it.
The other thing I would say, I mean, just looking at the esports public landscape, there is some scarcity value out there too. And I think the way we've put together the company, you do get this kind of diversified approach where you kind of have physical centers, you have the gambling piece, you have skill betting. Once we launch that, you have what William's doing with analytics. You have GG Circuit, which is enterprise software, but vertical focused for esports. You have, a number of different things. Oh, what we're doing with the tournament platform with the pro sports teams. So you really, what we're going to be doing with content, you get kind of to touch a bunch of different areas in this space that I think is unique in the public market right now. I mean, if you just are saying like to yourself, hey, I'm an investor, I think esports is a big trend. How are you going to play that right now in the public markets? Like, there's like 3 or 4 companies out there that you could buy. And, of those 3 or 4, I think we offer the best value proposition, but, probably enough on this. Do want to cross over my day job, but yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing it up.
Zev said, absolutely helpful. Appreciate it, Will. Can I also ask how Genji will plan to land Duel and Vi? We'll move on from this, Jeff. I promise. I know we don't want to bring.
No, this is a good question. This is actually,
but it is a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. This is one where I think we should move on from it. It's just that's one where like that's like
too much
reach out to me and connect with me. We'll set up a call.
That's exactly right. Like, if you have this level of interest in the business, the right way to do it is like, let's chat. And Jeff and I are the guys. Jeff is the first point of call, but we should have a more in-depth conversation because it's interesting, but it's probably better to take it offline.
Yeah, I mean, Zev, you can definitely, I'll speak for Jeff and William. You can reach both of them on LinkedIn very, very, very easily. And I know both of them would love to talk to you about it. And Angela, by the way, I missed her. She says agreed. Thank you, Angela. All right, guys, let's talk about, let's stay on the public side, actually, because there was a story which is, becoming less and less of an esports story as time goes on. But a gaming story nonetheless, which is, Allied back in the news again.
Yep.
And this time, so the headline here is Allied Esports Entertainment Board determines Bally's corporation revised proposal is superior to Element stock purchase agreement. That's a mouthful of a headline. Let me just summarize. Basically, Element had offered $70 million for the World Poker Tour asset. Allied was considering taking that offer, and then they said they were going to sell their esports assets separately and become a SPAC again. Bally's came along, offered them $100 million for everything, World Poker Tour and the esports assets. That deal, and we can discuss this, for some reason has now changed, or that offer has now changed, with Bally's now saying, we don't want the esports assets. we want just the World Poker Tour, and we'll give you 90 million in cash, as opposed to the 100 million, which was actually a stock deal, just to be clear. So look, we had speculated that Bally's was just after maybe World Poker Tour, and they were valuing the esports assets at something. Now it's clear that that something is around 10 million. I'm curious. The question I have, and Jeff and I know, sort of had this argument offline. Who changed the deal is what I would like to know. Was this Allied or was this
That's
Bally's?
a really interesting question. That's
William,
a fascinating
Lindsay,
question.
I'd love to know what you guys think on this. Who changed it?
It's the acquirer, is what I believe, right? Like these guys were selling, you know what I mean? Right? Like it's they're in the market to sell, you know what I mean? The buyer has put forth the offer. In my experience, if you're going to sell an asset, you sort of like, it's like you don't go to a store to buy something, right? And then the person's like, oh, whoopsie, no, that's actually not for sale. You know what I mean? So I suspect it's more on the acquisition side. We don't know. I'll tell you what, it would be more interesting if it was on the other side of the fence. And if it's the seller saying, hey, we believe we have so much conviction in these assets, right? We don't think because now we know the pricing on it, 10 million. We think 10 million is woefully undervaluing what this can do. Get out of here, right? We're going to grow it ourselves. I think that's really interesting if that's where it's caused by. But my suspicion is it's probably on the acquisition side. What do you think, Jeff?
William, this is why I love you, William, because I was team buyer too.
I think it's the exact opposite. I think Bally's came in, bid for the whole thing, said, hey, we'll pay you 100 million stock for the whole thing. And then the board said, no, we only want to sell the World Poker Tour asset. What would you bid for that? And then they said, okay, for that, we'd do 90 million cash. And then the board said, okay, now we're good with that. Like, I think it's as easy as that.
Allied
now
had
the
declared.
board, I think that's not even close to, I don't even think that's a question. I think that is just this, we can find this out, and maybe we never will, but I would say that I would bet a lot that that's the case. I would be very, very certain on that. The real interesting question is whether whether they should have taken the 100 million or do what they did, because I think 100 million in Bally stock is worth a lot more than 90 million in cash and keeping the esports assets, in my opinion. That's the more interesting question, is what they should have done.
Lindsay, please tell Jeff he's crazy, because Allied wanted to sell everything. Why would they decide at the last minute, no, we don't want to sell this?
They wanted to do asset sales, not sell the whole company, right? They want to get cash and then create a SPAC that they can go out and acquire other assets. If they just took the Bally stock, the asset of Allied Esports would no longer exist. The company, like the legal entity, would no longer exist. It would just be Bally's stock. Bally's would own the entity.
But do you think that Allied really had the leverage to go back to the person who was, offering them $100 million and say, no, you're not taking this from me?
They're a board of a public company, so they can do whatever. They can easily say,
but
hey,
that's a gutsy move, to Lindsay's point.
Oh yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying.
My exact point. I agree with Lindsay's point, but I'm saying that's what I think happened. I think they should have taken the 100 million.
I only really thought about this from the acquisitions perspective. I didn't even think of the possibility that it was the buyer that pulled the asset, to be honest.
It's very weird for a public company to announce, hey, we're going to buy this company, and then a week later say, oh no, we actually only want this one piece, right? Like, what would have changed Bally's mind?
Maybe they found skeletons in the closet
in a week. What did they? It's a public company. Allied's a public company. There's no skeletons. We all know that the esports business is bleeding money. Like, that's not a secret. It's not like a private company.
Yeah,
okay, so
maybe they're. I don't know.
Let's ask Jeff a question. Is should they have taken the original offer, the 100 million for both, or do we think Allied will come out on top having sold this in pieces?
I think that. Let's put it.
Go ahead and answer your own question, Jeff.
Part of this is I think the better question. In order to actually have the answer to this, you need to have a view on Bally stock, which I don't have a strongly educated view on Bally stock. I mean, they are a partner of ours, and I think that they've done a great job. Like, if you just look at how the stock's performed the last year, their chairman is doing this massive roll up. He's creating like this online sports betting, daily fantasy sort of behemoth. Like they've done 5 or 6 very smart acquisitions. World Poker Tour being one of them. I always, from the time we started talking about Allied, I always said like, this is what everyone's after, is this World Poker Tour business. So my view on this is kind of colored a little bit by the fact that I think that Bally's is a good stock. So I would rather own 100 million of Bally's stock than 120 million in cash currently, because I think that 100 million of Bally's stock will be worth 200 million next year. And I don't have a ton of confidence that 120 million in the hands of the board of Allied, which, doesn't have the greatest track record of capital allocation, will be, worth more than 120 million in a year, given those assets are burning 20 million a year just by existing.
I mean, that was my concern, which is burn, right? And if we step back and say the esports assets were worth 10 million, right? That's how Bally's essentially valued them. And those esports assets are burning 20 million a year. If Allied doesn't sell the esports assets within 6 months, they've come out worse than had they taken the $100 million deal. Cash versus equity aside, which is a whole other argument. But if it takes them more than 6 months, they end up sort of on the wrong side of this deal.
Well, it depends what they sell it for, but yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming they're not going to get a price that's radically different. They're not going to get an order of magnitude higher than whatever Bally's was valuing it at, right? It's going to be somewhere in that
case, then they should have sold it, obviously. But they're obviously betting that they will. I agree with you, but clearly they're valuing it. That's not. If they also agreed that it was worth 10 million, then they would clearly have sold it, I would think.
Yeah.
I would just love to be a fly on the wall in the conversations where they said, no, it's definitely going to be worth more than 10 million, or it is worth more than 10 million.
I mean, Jeff may be right in that their only consideration was cash versus stock. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, but then it's weird, right? Like if you can convince Bally's to do a 90 million cash deal, you could probably convince them to do a 100 million cash deal, right? So it's like, somehow I don't think the cash versus stock thing was the deciding factor here.
I think, and I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, but I think this is a control thing from the Allied management and the Allied board. I don't think they wanted to just like wipe their hands of like, okay, we sell the entity, we get Bally stock, and we no longer have jobs. I think they wanted to respac and do this whole process where they got another shot at basically running a public company. So I think that the only transaction they were willing to look at was ones where it gave them, runway afterwards. I don't think they want to just be completely subsumed by someone else. That's my thought.
Yep. Angela says, agreed. Angela, this is why you're awesome and why we have to have you on the
Angela,
podcast
who you
or the live stream. I'm just always assume she agrees with me. Okay.
We have a heated debate going on. You can't just say agreed.
I'm just gonna assume she's agreeing with me. All right. In the absence of other information, we have to make some assumptions here. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's talk about Huawei. Interesting sort of esports related story. And this was Huawei becomes first smartphone vendor to integrate esports updates to its assistant. So basically, as part of their sort of like their version of the Google Assistant or Alexa or any of these things, they're going to have esports scores. They're going to have like matchups, the same way you have sports and news integrated in your app, in your iPhone or Android, whatever. Huawei's building out their own integrated esports functionality in their assistant and in their phones. Now, I didn't see this article get a ton of play, but I think this is potentially quite major. And my question to you guys is, will we see Android and Apple follow suit with built-in esports functionality like this, esports news, scores, in the same way, sports, stocks, and like mainstream news are treated?
I mean, if you think like, isn't this sort of an easy question to answer in the sense the question is not when, if, but when? right? Like if
that's,
you really
that's a good answer though.
like
so if when then?
well, okay. Whoa. I
You
was
don't want the
asking the new
softball.
question. I'm really good at lobbing that. No, but like, let me make my point. Like, if you believe that this is a sport and you're not surprised to see baseball integrated or basketball integrated, why would you be surprised to see this integrated? It's just a matter of how quickly management decides that the market is there, how quickly they can get traction, how quickly it makes economic sense to have it as a feature. And I would imagine, given the demographics of smartphone users, it's probably pretty quick, right? Like I would imagine that, particularly when you think of trend adoptions on smartphone users, the people lining up for the latest iPhone aren't 65-year-olds, right? They tend to be 22 to 30-year-old young professionals who are status oriented. Pretty strong overlap with an esports audience today. So I don't think you're far away at all from that world.
So, but William, you asked a good question, then you didn't answer it. So what's the when?
What's today's year? 2021. It's now. I would say you'd see it in the next 2 to 3 years.
Interesting. Okay.
My thought on this is because I think William's answer is probably right. I just want to say resonates.
Jeff, I just to stop you. You don't have to always say something so obvious. It's
so the only thing I'd say, and this is a little bit off tangent, but it just made me think. I mean, how short-sighted was it for ESPN to shut down their esports? I mean, they are sports information news. Like that is literally their thing. And if we all agree that it's esports lines and esports stats are going to be integrated into your iPhone, like how is ESPN not want to own that content and that data? So that's all I'll say on that. That was just made me think of it.
When again, William asked a great question. What's the when for you, Jeff? How quickly do we see this?
What iPhone model are we up to currently?
11?
11?
12?
12.
Come on,
yeah,
guys.
the 12 just came out. Yeah, sorry.
I'll go with 16. So I'll take the over on William.
Wow.
I don't know what it'll be
4
called.
years?
Yeah. Okay. All right, Mr. Game System. Like,
Lindsay, do you feel? Look, because I will just.
When did lacrosse stats get integrated, Jeff? Why don't you tell us that?
Where exists? Are you crazy? Lacrosse is way ahead of esports, dude.
By the way, Angela, just on the last point, says agreed and exactly, which again was in response to me confirming she agrees with me. Christian says easy answer, yes. Prediction time, and he believes by end of next year, if not before, which is shorter than both of your predictions. Lindsay, where are you at in terms of when we see esports scores, stats, matchups integrated directly into what you get on your phone every single day?
So I am more in the 2 to 3 year camp for a couple of reasons. One is that there hasn't been any celebrities who aren't streamers as well, who've really stood out as someone. Obviously, there's people that everyone wants to follow, all of that, but there's not a lot of like celebrities in the public consciousness who are also pro players and who people keep up with in a way that's different than Twitch. So I'm not sure, if you're really into a pro player, you'd probably go watch their Twitch channel maybe, as well as their matches.
But it's more like I'm at work or I'm traveling or something, and I want to check if
you just want to check
New York
in on something really
Excelsior
quick.
won their latest match, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was the second point, is the way that these leagues are developing. I'm hoping it improves in the next 2 to 3 years, but there's also not a set structure for those leagues that's, again, been welcomed into the public consciousness. So I certainly hope that becomes more of more structured, easier to follow, all of that good stuff. And once it kind of, I don't know exactly what the right word is, but to me, the issue is that they're just not as popular as Twitch streams right now. Like people watch Twitch more than they watch Owl League on YouTube.
True.
So once those scales tip a little, I think it's going to be a very fast transition. When those scales tip, I'm not exactly sure.
Christian says agreed, shocking by ESPN. Venelin says, I think it might take a bit longer than it makes sense. The average age of key decision makers is still way too high. It's a good point.
It's also a great point.
Because we're talking about decision makers here at, Apple and Google and, OnePlus and Samsung, or whoever owns the platforms, the phone platforms. Agreed that may be a friction point. I mean, Angela also raises a great point, which is just an esports calendar would be a start. And I think Angela's point is especially spot on, because the reality is, like, there's not many good like destination sites where you can get everything. You know, there's good if you follow CS:GO or League specifically, or maybe Rocket League specifically. But it is a very fragmented space. And the problem is the people, I think, that are trying to consolidate are so focused on like live and video content that I think they're missing a lot of the data play that's going to happen. Like, I think Apple won't care to go and, you know, get live content from anyone, especially not a startup, but they will pay for a data, you know, stream that they just integrate into iOS.
Paul, who are the companies that are currently doing that, like the building the ESPN of esports, or whatever you want to call it?
Doing it well? Nobody.
Well, who's doing? Yeah, obviously.
I mean, you could go to sites like Juked, for example, is probably one of the more higher profile ones, right? Raised a bunch of money, and if you go there, you can see, you know, different matchups, CS:GO, League. Some of them you can watch them there. But I like, my view is their business gets disintermediated so quickly, right? As soon as the audiences grow, first of all the streaming platforms that they're borrowing from are going to want to keep their content. They're not just going to be happy letting it out into the wild. So they'll end up paying huge licensing fees for that content. And fundamentally, I think the Huawei kind of announcement is proof that most people, for like a score or a quick update, don't want to have another app, right? It's going to be built into your sort of daily, you know, view, into the stuff you check. Like, how many people install a separate weather app on their phone? Like, unless you're really into the weather, you probably use the default.
I don't know, Paul. I'm like,
you don't use Dark Sky? How do you?
Oh my God!
I hope you don't leave your like apartment. So I mean, you're the guy who orders coffee.
You're that meme. You're that meme that was going around like, oh, a lovely day outside.
This is funny because we had an entire 15-minute discussion in a staff meeting one day devoted to which weather app was the best, and one person had 8 different ones downloaded.
That's for esports, like scores and matches.
No, weather. I was saying, like,
weather.
We talked about this as a company. We discussed which weather app was the best.
Wow. I don't even know how to.
Right. So anyways, when there's an option like that for esports scores, people will come, but it would be even better if it was integrated.
Like, ESPN's really the only one who could have done it at the right scale to be standalone. Right? Like, the reality is most of these startups trying to do it are going to fail, right? There's not enough there that's proprietary. There's not enough there that can't be easily disintermediated. My guess is ESPN at some point does wake up, right? And will have a standalone property, you know, when they have someone in charge there who's not completely blind to the opportunity. And I think the focus will be more on, like, let's be Sports Center, not let's, you know, hire writers to write, you know, 10-page long articles pontificating on the esports scene, right? That I think their strategy was initially very wrong too. When all they needed to really be was Sports Center for esports, and it would have done very well, and I think would have been picked up by the Apples. Like, they have the scale to partner with an Apple or a Google and make something really exciting happen there. Martin says, don't forget about MSN Esports Hub. Yes,
it's the dark horse.
Martin,
right.
It is the dark horse.
It's the only one I check. It's like
dark horse.
Has anyone actually looked what's up there right now? Like, is anyone?
Let's do it. Why don't you put it on screen?
Pull it up.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing I worry about for the startups in the space is, like, even Twitch is like encroaching on it. YouTube, you know, Twitch has their own esports button right at the top now, next to browse.
That's right. Yeah.
And so the consolidation of scores, matchups, and content will happen, I think, with the bigger players before they happen anywhere else. Angela says esports betting operators will have the most dependable calendars. Yes, that is a really good point. And I also think, Angela, esports betting operators will naturally have the best data because they will have to, right? It's literally part of the business. And we'll get into the business of broadcasting, wrapping broadcasts with betting, all those good things. All those good things that Esports Entertainment Group can do, by the way. Vertical integration. All right. That was the Huawei story. I want to do one more story, guys. We have time for literally one more. So you guys choose. Do we do Angela, can we have you in every live stream, please? Just, I will put you on the payroll. We will just for this every time. We can talk about HyperX doing a clothing line, which is a bit of a silly story. We can talk about PS5 players not getting Bethesda games.
That one I want to talk about, but
you want to talk about that one, William?
Yeah.
Let's do that one. Let's do that one then. Okay.
We didn't even hear the third choice. What's the third choice?
No, what
choice
could be?
Well, I'm not saying we can do what you want. William. I just want to hear the third choice.
Well, then okay. Are you familiar with the economic concept of opportunity cost, Jeff? Because
oh my goodness.
It feels
you're
like
just
we're
hurting everyone right now.
Well, I'm saying maybe we could push to do 2 if they're really cool.
The meanest thing an economist can do. I mean, do you guys ever see that stand-up? There's a stand-up economist who's hilarious. Anyway, I will go into it anyway.
You've lost
I want to know. There's an economist who does stand-up comedy.
There's a stand-up economist
things don't go together.
Who's absolutely hilarious. You got to go Google. He does stand-up economics, and he has this joke that's like, the cruelest thing an economist can do is give you a choice between a free Snickers bar and another identical Snickers bar. All right, it's like,
oh my god.
It's good. It's good, guys. It's good. You have to do it. It's Nerd City.
Okay. Moving on. PCMag.com had an article that was titled "What Would Gamers Sacrifice to Keep on Playing?" We'll end with that. We'll do the PS5 story. It'll be a nice, fun story to end on. Okay. PS5 story. This one was from TechRadar.com. Headline here, very simple. PS5 players won't get future Bethesda games. It looks like future Bethesda titles will be Xbox exclusives. This was essentially revealed on March 11th. Phil Spencer, who's in charge of Xbox, addressed that speculation because everyone, in light of Microsoft's acquisition of Bethesda, wasn't sure. We weren't sure if they were going to be exclusive or not. It turns out that they are. It's going to be PC and Xbox only. Obviously, that talks about this as a blow to PS5. But I'm curious what you guys think. Is this...
Okay, this is an acquisition with a strategy, because it took all of the acquisition's 3-4 months old, basically.
And in fact, was only approved literally a few days ago.
And they've already dumped all the Bethesda games onto Game Pass, which we said was the huge synergy driver for this. And not only that, they've gone a step further. They've clawed everything back. They Elder Scrolls 6 being an Xbox exclusive is huge. It's huge. This is a really smart acquisition, and it shows Microsoft understands the value of buying content plays. They're only valuable if they're exclusive. They're only value if they're a reason to drive to your platform, right? And I'm so impressed that it's not that it's that they saw the strategy, they executed the strategy, and they executed it so quickly. This is not something where they bought it and were like, what are they going to do with it? This had to have been in mind in the early plannings from the very first conversations. And I think the conviction and the ability, and I'll be honest, let's talk about it. It's really bad for PlayStation gamers. I know it sucks. I'm sorry. And it sucks for everybody who bought a PS5 but from a business standpoint, it's excellent. I mean, they are maximizing the value of the asset.
So,
sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was gonna say, William, I mean, I love your enthusiasm. I think the only thing I would say, I'll come at it from a different angle, a little bit more cynical, and say, I mean, you were saying this as if this was the genius thing that Microsoft did. This was the obvious choice to buy Bethesda. They were always going to make these games exclusive. The question now, so they've done the right acquisition. They had the conviction. They had I'll say the right strategy, because I'll explain why I'm saying that in air quotes. They had the conviction to do this. It was smart to announce it right away, because let's face it, every day people are buying either an Xbox.
That's exactly right. You have to. Great point. You have to
announce it as
signaling value. If you like Elder Scrolls, PlayStation 5 is off your consideration set. Right. Yeah.
Now, the reason why I use the right strategy quote in air quotes is because that story will be written in the future. The only way it becomes the right strategy is if it actually enhances enough people to buy Xboxes and not PlayStations, because you got to remember, you're giving up 50%, or actually probably well over 50% of the revenue that you would have expected to generate from those games. And you're going to be putting them in Game Pass probably day one. So like you're giving up even more of the upfront revenue. So this is a conviction is the right word. Like this is Phil Spencer having a plan, having conviction, and having buy-in from the top, right? You don't spend $7.5 billion and effectively cut that company's revenue in half, right?
Yep.
Day one, cut it in half without having some real buy-in. Now we'll see if it's the right strategy. I personally agree with you. I think it will turn out to have been the right strategy, but that story will be written based on who kind of wins the rest of the console war.
Yeah.
I would love to ask you guys as gamers how you think this sets a precedent, and if it's a good precedent or a bad precedent for continuing to build the gaming industry. Like if this kind of walled content thing, do you think that's going to affect any type of growth?
It sort of sucks because I liked the world we were going to previously, where there were a few marquee games that were enough to make the advertising rounds and give people press conferences, but everything was essentially a non-exclusive title. However, I think the phase we're in is a little bit of an interim phase, because I think this in the long run is going to look more a lot like the news I'm waiting for is Game Pass available on PlayStation 5. Like, I'm quite serious. Like, that's the news I'm waiting for.
That's a different direction.
It's a totally different direction.
So you can't get the Bethesda games, but you can buy Game Pass.
Well, no, because the real place,
literally exact
the recurring revenue streams are
literally exactly
like the real place this is going is Microsoft has recognized for a long time that these lock-in loyalty-based subscription services are super great. In fact, they're so great it makes sense to release games day one on them, right? The obvious thing to do is there's nothing about Game Pass that has to be tied to Xbox. Nothing. They could push that service just like Disney Plus is on Xbox and PlayStation 5. Game Pass could run on both services. Now, I'm not saying this is likely to happen, but the point is I think we're in a weird interim stage where we're still letting the box dictate the platform. I think in future it's going to look a lot more like Netflix and Disney Plus, which doesn't feel as mean to consumers because you're not asking, like, Disney Plus isn't like $500 for your Disney Plus streaming box. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it'll feel a lot less mean when there's these multiple gaming services, and the exclusivity would feel a lot less mean-spirited when really all it means is another $9.99 subscription you can cancel at any time, which is sort of how the other content-based industries have moved.
Does Microsoft break down on their gaming side? I don't believe they do, but how much comes from like third-party games versus Game Pass versus the actual box sales? Because I would imagine that it's still the third-party game, like, the 30% that they get when someone buys FIFA, on their platform, which is why them putting the Game Pass on PlayStation probably doesn't happen in the very, for quite some time, until that Game Pass revenue starts exceeding the box revenue plus the third party revenue. And I don't think we're anywhere close to that at this point.
But you could probably back into that number, right? Because they do say how many Game Pass subscribers.
Yeah. Sure. If we played around, we probably.
But tell me you can't. Look, I'm not foretelling this is like it's definitely going to happen, but it's an interesting world to consider, because I think, generally, like, I see this a lot of the time where companies invent a new product and they slavishly hold that new product subservient or subsidiary to their prior suite of products, when really the new product is what they should be doing, right? And I sort of feel Microsoft is entering that world with Game Pass, where that product is so great, it's so amazing, it's such a best-in-class. Like, why isn't that the marquee product? And why isn't it, how does the Xbox serve Game Pass? What is it that it's a bit out there, but I really think it's true. I think it's a world you see yourself living in.
Given they just spent like $10 billion probably building the new Xbox, and then $7.5 billion to have exclusive content to sell it, I think we're 15 years away from
you say
future
potato and I say potato, Jeff. Let's dream. Like,
well, it's just like you wouldn't invest if that was your vision of, hey, why don't we just have Game Pass like be a Trojan horse and put it on every platform? You wouldn't have fought the battle to build an Xbox, right?
Yeah.
You would just say, hey, we're no longer building a box. We're just a software aggregator.
That's fair. I definitely don't think the vision I described is the vision Microsoft has today. Yeah. But how long before it's the vision, right? Like, you know, we're still in a world where the Netflixes have to build movie theaters, the consoles, right? But we will be leaving that world. And I'm not talking about live streaming here. This is the subscription library of games model, which is very different. It's still DLC, you know, ground based, you know, like but yeah, I don't know. It's just I put it out there because it's fun to speculate. Like let's ask a big question, you know.
And these tend to be cycles, to be honest, right? Microsoft was in the software business. Then they decided they wanted to make their own hardware. Then they decided they don't want to make their own hardware anymore. They want to be just a software provider. Then they make hardware again, right? Like they tend to sort of go back and forth between we want to make hardware to go with our software versus we just want to be the best software company in the world. And so I have a funny feeling. I love William's idea here. I just think it will probably go in cycles, not like shift one direction and then stop there. I just see this as like very counter to the trend of cross-platform everything, right? And we know you need exclusives to sell consoles, but the trend really has been like, let's make everything work everywhere. I think what none of us know is what are the real numbers behind this, right? Like if Bethesda continued to sell for every platform, revenue would be X. If we bring it as an exclusive, revenue would be Y plus incremental Xbox sales Z, right? So is X bigger than Y plus Z? We don't really know, right? And so the question of like conviction and courage here, I think depends a lot on that. Like if Microsoft looked at it and said, look, we're going to make less revenue having Bethesda as exclusives, but we believe in the 10-year vision here. I would call that courage, right? Maybe not the best business decision, but courage. Versus, you know, if they looked at it and they said, we're definitely going to make way more money by going exclusive, I don't call this much of a courageous decision, just sort of a basic financial decision.
So courageous because they could be wrong, right? Like it's a bet. Now,
True.
I'm sure they didn't do the calculation. And by the way, this was my point earlier at the whole beginning. I think you probably said it a little more eloquent than me, but I am sure they have a model that says that they will make more, you know, dollars of it's probably not even revenue. I bet it's bottom line, right? Because you're kind of trading top line revenue for the license fee, 30% that you're getting from when the razor blade model, which flows through at a much higher rate. So I'm sure they are saying
that discussed. Is that discussed anywhere that we know about? I don't know.
I've read the book 2 times, William. I told you this.
And by the way, if
I am
you've read
certain
the book,
that they have
guys,
a model. I'm certain they have a model that shows our operating income over the next 7 years will be higher in this division if we make it exclusive versus not exclusive. So there's no way they're like making what they think is an uneconomical decision, but that still takes some courage to model that out and say, hey, we're going to cut our revenue in half and kind of make that.
Yeah, and to give you an example of the courage, how many years do you think there were models in Activision Blizzard saying a free to play Call of Duty will make us more money? It's really hard to do it because guess what? That's not this year. You're giving up that $60. Like it's hard to do these things. It speaks very well of the corporation. They can make those decisions.
I just want to read some comments here. Martin says, that's a twist. It sounded on Inquisition that they weren't going to go this way. Martin, I think it surprised a few people. I definitely think a lot of people were surprised by the announcement. Christian says, content gobbling war, just like we are seeing with streaming services. I think we all agree with that. No, I mean, we've talked about consolidation and all those kinds of things, but definitely a content gobbling war, especially for exclusives. Martin says, I guess I'm surprised as Microsoft's other massive acquisition, Minecraft, they never made exclusive. This is a good question for you guys. Well, will Minecraft ever go totally?
The difference is, correct me if I'm wrong, aren't most of Bethesda's games more like single player kind of? I think that's sort of correct.
Yeah. I mean, a majority, maybe probably
more like single player experiences. So I guess my point was going to be that Minecraft is such a social game. The network effects of having more players, it outweighs the platform exclusivity. Also, Minecraft's big on PC, so I think there was other reasons why they didn't make that exclusive. But yeah,
but Jeff, wouldn't the math
also
be
think
even
you have a question of
here?
Who's a purchase gator, right? Like Bethesda's do older SKU games where it's probably a reason to convert platform. kids, like, which is probably more the Minecraft demographic, probably aren't the only purchase gate for it. It's probably through parent. So there's probably less of an ability to pull with the exclusive content. But yeah, primarily I think it's network effects driven. It's exactly what Jeff said. There are more NFX titles, so it doesn't make you actually damage the underlying game. Like Oblivion, or what is it? Skyrim is still Skyrim. It's probably better if there's other people doing it and things, but Skyrim's still Skyrim. But Minecraft would not be Minecraft without all the other folks doing it. So,
but doesn't that make the argument for going exclusive, right? Like, can you imagine the kid who's been playing Minecraft with his friends now for 2 years, right? And all of a sudden he can't play with them anymore unless he goes and buys an Xbox.
Yeah, and then they go to Roblox. They literally go to Roblox. You're lopping the network effects off at the knees. And the other thing is there's a very strong Minecraft competitor in the space, whereas I'm not sure it's true. Bethesda really has a lock on great RPGs. I mean, that's not true. There are great RPGs made by other people, but they really are a single-handed brand in that regard, you know.
Christian says, as a console gamer, I can testify that I have played both Xbox and PS, and I'm not as loyal to the console as to the games. That, you know, this is why exclusives are so important. Zev says that makes sense. Sony uses Azure Cloud. No,
that's correct.
Yeah. Sony does not have their own cloud infrastructure. Zev says, I agree. Game Pass is the vision, but I think you still need the consoles last generation, maybe other than PCs, because the data infrastructure isn't there yet to stream games. Zev, I think we were talking about Game Pass here really in the context of like an all-you-can-eat game service, not so much the cloud gaming piece specifically. More like a true Netflix for games. All right, guys, let's do our last story quickly here. It's a fun one. I'm not even going to show the story. The headline is, what would gamers sacrifice to keep on playing? Okay. And I'm going to go around and you guys can guess too in the chat. Okay. So they polled a bunch of gamers. I don't know the exact amount. Okay. And they asked them basically what they would give up for gaming, essentially. Okay. And so some percentage of gamers, I want you guys to guess, would rather give up Netflix to be able to play games. So they could never watch Netflix anymore if it meant them playing games. What percentage of gamers do you think would give up Netflix completely?
80%.
I was going to say 70. 80.
Does anyone think it's under 50?
43.
You think it's under 50, Jeff?
I don't know. I just kind of wanted to be
61% would rather give up Netflix than video games.
Price is Right rules. I won.
Anyone think less than 50% would rather give up texting?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Does that include like
nobody texts anymore, Paul?
Does that include like
I was going to say
like
Snapchat? We still
text. Snapchat and
that's because we're no longer cool.
We
Discord. We're cool.
Yeah. I was going to say Paul never answers his text. He only answers Discord.
52% would rather give up texting, which I thought was a very shocking statistic.
But when you think about all the other services, it makes sense.
What about talking with friends?
Like out loud? Oh God, I hope it's
like,
under 50.
I hope it's like 15%.
This got dark really quickly.
55% would rather give up gaming over talking with friends. Okay.
Okay.
So
45%. So 45%. Nearly half would give up their friends.
They're friends in the game.
I think this is a flaw in the polling. I think people are interpreting that as like, you know, which activity would I rather do? Like, oh, okay.
Okay,
you know.
Jeff, who are you? Me? I don't want to hear about your polling issues.
Jeff, tell us about the methodology at play here.
I'm just hoping
sample size.
I'm hoping that they're not.
With this question.
I'm hoping there's not like a whole survey.
I'm actually reading this.
I'm hoping there's not a whole survey of people that are like willing to literally never communicate with their friends again in order to like play.
45% of all gamers. Jeff.
Hold on.
Read the survey.
Let me settle this. Let me settle this. It says here, the company surveyed those who play games daily and found that if they had to choose between giving up their social media followers forever or not gaming for a month, 62% would say goodbye to their online friends. Hold on. It gets worse. Or it gets better if we're in the gaming industry, which we are. They'd even be willing to let go of some IRL friends, with 54.6% who would prefer to not talk to their friends for a month if it was a choice between that and gaming.
Oh, if it's just a
54
month. I mean, if it's just a month.
I mean,
yeah, nobody said that. You got your friends back?
Yeah.
Is it release season? Are we talking like October, November timing here?
65% would abstain from alcohol. 66% would do without Amazon Prime delivery. And 67% would give up food delivery apps.
Yeah, I would do all those things if I had to for gaming.
For gaming.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
I love it.
I would do all those things for a lot of different things, to be honest.
Lindsay's like,
Amazon Prime
guys,
isn't that
like,
important.
I mean,
these aren't
life is
difficult for me
all
to give
about
up.
choices. It's all the opportunity cost, right, William?
Martin says Netflix, one streaming platform or no games. That's a no-brainer. Clearly the data is very clear that it is a no-brainer for most gamers.
It's true. I mean, you can just watch Paramount Plus.
There you go. These numbers are entertaining, Christian. I'm happy you find it entertaining. Martin says none of these are surprising. Losing gaming for a lifetime is too high a price. I agree. I don't think any of us would give that. I think any of us would give up just about anything for that, for the risk of losing gaming for a lifetime. Guys, we got to do this very quickly. What are we playing this week, Lindsay?
I was Jeff this week. Too much work to do. Couldn't play anything.
Lame.
I know. Sorry. Actually, I'm more like Paul. Paul's the one who's always like, oh,
It's true.
How can you do that, Lindsay? So lame.
I expect you guys to carry.
oh,
Jeff, I know you spent a lot of time gaming.
Yeah, take a seat now because I have a story to tell.
Oh,
but
boy.
I think Paul should tell it, actually. Did you use this last week when I was out?
I mentioned it, but I think you should tell the story.
Tell us the
I
story,
got
man.
I went up to see Paul's studio because I thought that would be cool. I'd not seen where the magic happens. So I went up and saw Paul's studio, and he's got, all sorts of high-end equipment, as you would imagine. And we decided to play some games. So I played Valorant for the first time. And I'm not going to say that I was the best player out there, but I definitely was better than William. That was at least what was told to me. So I also got nauseous after 10 minutes and pretty much said I'm never playing an FPS again. But I'll rest on the fact that Paul said to me that I was better than William at Valorant.
Paul does know.
First of all, I did not say that. Second of all, you probably lasted only like 8 minutes. Let's be clear.
It felt like 10. It was felt like longer.
Which I couldn't figure out why. I actually felt terrible. Couldn't figure out what it was that was disorienting you so much.
It's the noise canceling headphones.
They were not noise canceling headphones, but I will say, and maybe there's an insight here into Valorant that you picked up the game pretty quickly and picked up mouse and keyboard pretty quickly, and I thought that was impressive for someone who had no experience.
You said I was better than William.
Yeah. No, I would put you guys. You're about equal. About equal.
It was fun. We had a good time.
It was a good time. William, what have you been playing?
Where's Chris of Coins? Chris of Coins. I played Loop Hero. I took your recommendation. I downloaded Loop Hero.
And lived up to the hype?
I mean, it's had 500,000 copies sold in the first week, so it's definitely an indie success.
Yeah.
I wish I could give it an unadulterated endorsement. I'm not sold. I think it's one of those games that gives you an illusion of choice without actually a lot of choice. Like I think its persistent systems do a lot of lifting. I wouldn't put it on my recommend list. Sorry, Chris, but it's definitely very fun. Like I've definitely enjoyed my time with it. And it's possible I'm missing something because I seem very bad at it. Like I lose most of the runs I get going. I've unlocked 3 of the classes. So I think I've seen
what kind of RPG is it, William?
It's an interesting. I always like the Devolver games. It's a Devolver. Devolver is the publisher.
But it's like real-time action RPG, right?
No, it's the RPG plays itself. The only thing you can choose is the hero moves on a loop constantly, and the only thing you can choose is what is built on the loop. So the hero will always do the same things. They will always fight monsters if they're there. They'll pick up treasure if it's there.
Got it.
The only thing you can really choose is, every time you kill something or defeat a monster, you get a card, which is something in the world. and you can choose what is placed where in the world. So it's actually quite interesting because there's quite a lot of like, but this is also where it sort of, I felt like it let me down a little bit. Like in principle, it feels like there's a lot of strategy about what you build where and the synergies between the tiles. In practice, it felt like the runs for me were basically, did I get good equipment? Because the equipment is randomly dropped. And if I consistently am getting, attributes that are strong for my class, it'll be a good run regardless of what I build. And if I'm not getting good equipment, even if I build very cleverly, the run doesn't go anywhere. So I left it feeling neutral, but like I had a lot of fun with it and I really gave it a shot. And I appreciate these guys for doing a very different system. Like I love that the Devolver games always seem to have unique systems that you haven't seen before. And this is a really interesting one.
Cool. Martin says, lots of chess. Visited the Melbourne Chess Club for the first time. Largest one in Southern Hemisphere. Chess is popping off. I think Hikaru's stream I was looking today had like 45,000 people or 50,000 people for a chess stream, like watching the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. It's just amazing. I'm shocked at how popular chess has become. I played Apex. I mistakenly believed that I could grind to Predator in like 2 hours over the weekend. And I could not. But that's about all I played this week. Christian says Ratchet and Clank remake for PS4. Interesting. Aren't they making a new game for PS5? Or am I thinking of something else?
Bandicoot. It's about
that's Crash Bandicoot. That's right. That's right. You're right. Played the original back in 2000s. Very cool. Guys, that ends this week's podcast, or after show live stream, I should say. For those of you who haven't already, if you bought William's book, if you read William's book, if you love William's book, which you all do, I'm sure, go leave a review on Amazon. Go tell them how much it's awesome. If you haven't already done it, please. Check out the podcast tomorrow. It drops every Thursday. It's a great episode. We talk a lot about agencies, talent, stuff that we don't usually touch on the podcast. So it was really different. It was good. As always, tell other people about the live stream. We do it every Wednesday evening at 8:30. Go follow us, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's all at Biz Esports. And thank all of you for coming. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, William. Thanks, Jeff. You're all truly amazing. And that's it. We will see you guys next week.
And happy St. Patrick's Day.
Is it? Oh yeah, that's right. Happy St. Pat. We should have done some kind of drinking game. No, did I miss that?
Jeff tried, and it didn't get a lot of traction.
we should have done. We kept talking about the metaverse drinking game. We really should have done that.
Ugh, bummer. Well, we wouldn't have taken any drinks this week, luckily.
There you go. Anyways, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.